We will start today's session by by dedicating it to His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder Acharya for International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So today we are stepping into the 4th chapter, and this is titled as the Transcendental Knowledge. Now we have so far been hearing this word transcendental again and again. And we know Krishna is transcendental, right? So now this is the title of the chapter, and this chapter has 42 verses. And being the 4th chapter, we are dividing it for our convenience into 6 subdivisions. Today we'll target to, cover the first 2 parts of the 6. And to start with, so in the 3rd chapter, how is this linked, right? Similarly, we need to understand, right? So how is the prior chapter leading to the next? There is a connection. Like for 3rd chapter, the connection was in the 2nd chapter, listening to Krishna's instructions, Arjuna was confused, right? Either to perform actions or to renunciate, right? And we discussed how Krishna clarified, right, that he should perform Nishkam Karma, right? Nishkam Karma Yoga is performing your activities without expecting the fruitive results, right? Now, what is the connection between 3rd and 4th? So towards the end of 3rd chapter, we learned about our greatest enemy, which is lust, right? That hankering attachment, right? Which is lust. Now, when Krishna mentioned this enemy to us, and we also learned how we keep thinking that our greatest enemy is outside us, right? This person is thinking this about me, that person, right? We have our own perception of enemy. Or enviousness. But how Krishna is highlighting, very nicely that it's actually the greatest enemy is within us, right? And it's a within journey. And that's why, how this lust can be conquered. In the end, Krishna says, first of all, he says that where are the sitting places, like locations. He also gives us the enemy. He also gives us the locations. And it is mind, intelligence, and senses, right? And then in the end, he concludes that this lust can only be controlled by transcendental knowledge, which is spiritual intelligence, which he mentioned, and by following the regulated principles, right? Now, when we are talking about spiritual intelligence, this is what this chapter is all about, right? So I'm just reading through this because we have went through this just now. So Krishna describes that how lust can be overcome, how we can curb the lust is by spiritual intelligence. And he also explained Arjuna that what is the purpose of performing Nishkam Karma Yoga? By performing Nishkam Karma Yoga, our heart gets purified. And once our heart gets purified, the knowledge can be awakened. We will be in a position to receive that knowledge, the transcendental knowledge, right? The precursor to understand, to get that in the transcendental knowledge is purification of heart. Yeah? And then in this chapter, like I said, Krishna will beautifully explain how, he has given this knowledge, since not just Arjuna, but way beyond that. And also, what is the lineage, right? And what is glory of this knowledge? So we'll start today. Like I said, the first section we have divided into verse 1 to 4, and that focuses on how this transcendental knowledge has been come down, the parampara, right? So this is really important for us to understand that it has to come. Krishna is highlighting in the next verse, it will come from parampara, right? So it's like, we go to a school or an institution to study and to understand, right? We cannot just sit and read books and receive the knowledge. We only receive it once we step into the institution. So similarly, we can't just sit and read Vedas on our own, right? And receive that knowledge. Right? So let's see what what process is Krishna pitching in here, yeah, to receive such knowledge. Okay, so this is the first shloka of our chapter, and again, today we will be going through some famous verses which all of us know, a couple of them for sure, and also quite a lot of important verses. And for example, if you can, write down and please go through the purports. Prabhupada has explained beautifully this verse 4.1, then of course 4.3, which talks about qualifications of us. What qualifications do we need to have to receive this knowledge? And then we have our famous Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya Paritranaya all coming in today, and also a very important verse, which is 4.9. So especially the 4.9, please go through the, purport, I would request, right? So the first verse is, how Krishna has transferred this knowledge. Yeah. So can I, request Biswaji, will you be able to read the Sanskrit and the English version?
Yes, Mother. Hare Krishna. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Vyam Vivasvana Manabe Praham Manuriksha Be Brabit.
Thank you.
The personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, Vivaswan, and Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikakshwa. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Biswaji. So this is showing the lineage, right? So Krishna is saying here, Imam Vivasvate Yoga. Yeah. This yoga. Yeah. Proktavanaham Avyavan. Proktavan is, he's instructing. Yeah. And Avyayam is, we will come across this word, it's imperishable, not destructible. Yeah. Now Vivaswan is nothing but sun god. Yeah. The name of the sun god. Yeah. It came to Vivaswan, who is the father of the Kshatriyas, right? So he is sun god himself, was a Kshatriya, right? And then it comes down further to Manu. Yeah, Manu is the father of mankind. And then Ikshvaku. Ikshvaku was one of the most famous kings in Ramji's dynasty lineage. Yeah. So Krishna is highlighting here that the knowledge was actually, it started, Krishna gave first to whom? To Vivaswan, which is sun god. And then when we see these personalities, we see that it was given to such great personalities, right? Like sun god was a Kshatriya. He was like father of all Kshatriyas. And then he gave it to Manu, who is the father of overall mankind, right? And that shows that who all were given this were all in very important kingship positions, very important leadership positions, right? Why? Because so that the population, receives spiritual knowledge and follows the principle. Yeah, because if the king is establishing certain rule, right now, like our government, if government establishes some rule, we have to follow, right? So it is very important in that time, it was kings, right, who ruled it. So if kings follow that, if they receive the knowledge and they follow the principles, it was made sure that the population also gets it in the lineage continues. Yeah. Now Krishna is also pointing here to increase Arjuna's faith, right? That it was this such cream of knowledge was given to such great personalities, and now it is being given to Arjuna, right? So, and why sun god? Can anybody think why sun god especially? Because presence of sun is, that means absence of darkness, right? So sun god was given this because sun dissipates the darkness, and darkness is nothing but our ignorance in this material world, right? We are in darkness. So it was particularly given to sun god because he's an ideal, symbol for eradicating darkness. And hence he's the presiding deity of knowledge. Sun is known as the presiding deity of knowledge. Okay. And in purport, Prabhupada has mentioned, something really very nice. Kavyaji, will you be able to read it?
Yes, Mataji. The king of all planets are especially meant for the protection of the inhabitants, and therefore the royal order should understand the science of Bhagavad-Gita in order to be able to rule the citizens and protect them from material bondage of lust. Human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge in eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the executive heads of all the states and all planets are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Prabhupada, again, that's what I've explained, right? Prabhupada clearly highlights here the need of having this knowledge, especially in the leadership positions, yeah, so that the humans can achieve their purpose of their life. And what is that purpose? To get rid of this birth and death cycle and to go back to Krishna, right? So, and that's why, as per our Vedas, it is mentioned that it is, this is important. As per our Vedas, it is mentioned that a king is not a king if his subjects are not educated on how to get rid of this birth and death cycle. Yeah. So it is very important for the kings, as per the Vedic injunctions as well, right? To impart that knowledge, to have that lineage. Yeah. And in this shloka, because we are talking here about how this knowledge came down, right, in Parampara. Now, Prabhupada has also explained in the purport how our cycles look of yuga, right? We know there are 4 yugas, right? We all know. Satyuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, and Kali. And we are now in Kali Yuga, right? So we did touch on this during our 9 sessions as well. But just to touch base again, in case this was just to refresh our memory. So Kali Yuga, the duration is 432,000 years, and 2 times of that is Dwapar, 3 times of that is Treta, and 4 times of that is Satyug. And that's why we would see in Satyug, people live for thousands of years, right? The duration of itself was long. And then we would see how in Treta, then they lived similarly, right? In 1000, and Dwapar, they lived in hundreds. In Kali Yuga now, we have come down, right? So in here, why this cycle is mentioned? Because we want to realize how old is the knowledge of Gita, even by Sun Lord. Yeah, it's given by Krishna, sorry. So just to give a glimpse, not going too much in technical, but for us to realize how ancient is this knowledge. Yeah. And so the 4 yuga cycle, 1 yuga cycle of all the 4 is called as 1 Divya Yuga or 1 Chatur Yuga. Okay. Now, such 71 Divya Yugas make 1 Manvantar. Okay. And such 14 Manvantars, is 1 day of Brahma. And Brahma lives for 100 years. And each year, 1 year of Brahma has 360 days. So you can imagine just 1 day of Brahma is 14 Manvantaras. Plus, Manvantaras are, and then there are night times, which is Sandhyas. Okay. So similar, the amount of Manvantaras and same amount of Sandhyas makes up to 1 Kalpa, which is Kalpa is nothing but 1 day of Brahma. Okay. And this is explained in the purport, for us to have an idea. Okay. So similarly, from the calculations, what we get is that life of Brahma is around 311 trillion years, approx. Okay. Oops. Sorry. Right. So it's that long. So, and say, so that is a long time Brahma lives, right? It goes beyond our material calculations as well, right? And just for you to know, where are we right now? We are currently in the, so currently Brahma is approximately 51 years old, and we are currently in the 7th Manvantar. Of the Manvantar, it is 28th Divya. So that is where we are right now. And nothing I'm talking out of this thing, everything is in purport. Yeah. So that's why I was saying, please go through purport, because first time when we hear it, maybe it is a little bit complex, right? So why are we saying this? Because it's just not that Krishna told this science just 5,000 years ago to Arjuna. It is as old as sun god. Yeah. And Prabhupada highlights to sun god, the history of Gita is, it must be approximately 12 crore years ago that this was spoken, right? And we see, the relevance is still the same when we go through the same Gita. Yeah. The important thing for us to understand is that it was, whether it was spoken then or 5,000 years ago, or now that we are learning it, right? It is still relevant, equally relevant. Yeah? That's why we need to similarly have that faith, even in our Vedas, when we talk about Vedas being established. So we have to have that, seamless faith that they are spotless, versus to our current material science, which is struggling. We can see it, right? And we can also provide a couple of examples. I don't want to go very much in depth with it, but we think that ancient historic or ancient things, is not relevant for today's world, right? There are many times that we also question, or we come across people who question on, are these Veda scriptures, are they really relevant, right? But we need to understand that anything on our scripture is also very scientific. And you would see, it always remains the same. Unlike our science, material science, right? For example, when I was a child, I learned Pluto was the 9th planet. And now I'm seeing my children learning that there are only 8 planets. Pluto is no more counted. So our material science, it changes every now and then. But we see Vedas, when we see such references, we see in Vedas that there's a clear description of human embryology in there. Yeah. Which exactly matches when we see, the process now, which is established by our medical science after these many years, right? Similarly, the scriptures clearly mention that Earth is Bhugol, right? But, it was only at certain period that, the Greek scholars came up and it was finally established that it's actually a sphere. So these are also, Vedas are also scientific, and they are definitely relevant. We need to have that faith when we see that Gita, even though spoken, crores or millions years ago, the relevance is the same, and the same thing is with the Vedas. Yeah. So coming further, this is the second shloka, and this will be coming for us this week for recitation for all of you. Yeah, because it is one of the most important shlokas as well. So can I just go? Rama Prabhaji, will you be able to read the Sanskrit and English?
Yes, disciplic succession. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo vidu sa kaleneha mahata yoganashta parantapa. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Bhagavad-Gita 4.6.
Thank you very much, Rama Prabhaji. So, Evam parampara praptam. Krishna is clearly stating here. It is thus only by disciplic succession. Parampara. You get it. Okay? You get this knowledge, right? Imam Rajarisho Vidu. Rajarishi is, like Ikshvaku Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj. So they are Raja, that is kings, but Rishi as well. Raj Rishi. It's, So this is how the Raj Rishi is also received. Yeah? Sa Kalena Mahata. In course of time, Krishna is acknowledging here, in course of time, Yoga Nashta Parantapa. Parantapa is nothing but Arjuna, name of Arjuna. So Yoga Nashta Parantapa. So in course of time, this science has, been lost. So Krishna himself is acknowledging, and that's why he retold Gita, right, to re-establish things. Now, so when the chain was started by Krishna to sun god to Manu, Manu to Ikshvaku, they understood the science as it is, right? But in due course, we see, because before it was like Shruti, right? People used to, when something was told, they could just hear and remember. That was the level of intelligence. And now we see our memories, even when we go through, we can't recollect, right? One important thing here, Krishna is highlighting that it cannot be got by just self-reading, self-struggle, right? It cannot be got by just sitting and reading books and buying some books, etc. Yeah, it can only be got by disciplic succession, by parampara. Yeah, so when Krishna recognized 5,000 years ago that the parampara was broken, therefore he declared, right, that the Gita has appeared, right? It was, he mentioned Gita. And why was it broken? Because, see, when we see, right, in our day-to-day life also that, say, a person is initiated, right? We see, at certain stage, we see that they don't follow the instructions given by their guru as it is. Yeah, they cannot live with, follow that, right? And that's why they start interpreting things with their limited knowledge, and they change the rules and regulations as per their own convenience to make it work, right? It's just like, say we have a translator, somebody here doesn't understand, say, English, yeah? And there is a translator in between who is translating exactly what I'm saying and conveying it to the people who are not able to follow it. And what if the translator brings up something, doesn't understand something from my end and brings up their own story and translates it? So that is breaking the succession, right? So that's why. So it did not come down as it is, right? So in same way, people may be great, scholars, like, they may be very great orators, they may be famous personalities. I also see that they may be great Sanskrit scholars, they can read the shlokas very well. But that doesn't mean that they actually know the knowledge of Bhagavad-Gita as it is, right? So same way, at present moment, there are so many editions of Gita, right? So many commentaries. We mentioned this, like there are around 700 commentaries on Gita. It is the most commented spiritual book, right? But almost all of them are not according to the disciplic successions. We need to have, Krishna is highlighting, this should only be given by disciplic succession as it is. Right? So that's why we have to ensure, it is very important for us to take a lessons learned from this, that we have to ensure to get this science, the spiritual science, only from authorized places, only from authorized, disciplic successions. Yeah? And we learned this, right? What are the authorized? That comes to our mind. What are those authorized disciplic successions? And we learned this in the 9 sessions. The Shloka from Padma Puran, which is mentioned in Padma Puran. I'll not go through the Shloka because we have done this before. But the key takeaway from this is that in Padma Puran, it's clearly mentioned that, we see a word here, right? Kalau, right? That in especially Kali Yuga, therefore in Kali Yuga, there are 4 bona fide sampradayas. Sampradayas are the parampara disciplic successions, right? And we should be taking the spiritual knowledge only from one of these sampradayas. If not, then it will have not any effect. If your guru is not from one of these 4 sampradayas, then it will not have any effect. Right? and it's mentioned in Padma Puran, right? So only when we follow, the key thing is why? Because like Krishna says, as it is, it should come, right? From the disciplic succession. If we don't follow from one of these, if we don't learn from one of these four sampradayas, we will not see a transformation within ourselves. And the whole thing of when we learn Gita is to transform ourselves. That is the key, right? So, and we learned that, just putting that into the map, so that I know a couple of you were not in the first 9 sessions. So I've just remained this slide deck where it clearly shows that Krishna, he gave it to Lord Brahma, Lakshmi Ji, Lord Shiva, and 4 Kumars. These are the 4 sampradayas. And they passed it on to, for Lord Brahma, it is Madhvacharya, Lakshmi Ji, it's Ramanujacharya, Lord Shiva is Vishnu Swami, and 4 Kumaras is Nimbarkacharya. Yeah. And where does ISKCON fall? It falls under the Brahma Sampradaya. So this is the whole disciplic succession. From Brahmaji, it came to Narad Muni, yeah, and then Vyasdev, and it comes down, and Prabhupada falls in the same. Yeah. So now, just giving an example again, because these stick in our mind, like we see from the start. So maybe somebody can read this. So Reshma ji, will you be able to read it?
Yes, Mataji. The bulb cannot glow unless it is connected through electric supply to the power station. Similarly, only if knowledge is coming through parampara, it will awaken our Krishna consciousness.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So, right. So how does everything in our house glow up? Because they are connected to a power source, right? Power station. So we need to understand, if we try to read Bhagavad-Gita by just buying books on our own, it is very clear that, it is not possible. We need to connect. We need to connect to the powerhouse. Only then we will glow. That is, we will transform, right? So knowledge coming through parampara can only bring that transformation, because that awakens our real knowledge, right? So, and our situation is, of trying to understand the scriptures without bona fide spiritual master is like what? We also gave this example. Sorry, my screen is playing up. Okay, now it's fine. Yeah. So us trying to understand the scriptures without a spiritual master, is bona fide spiritual master, is like those 6 blind men and elephant. We are trying to explore, conclude on our own, but only when we have a spiritual master, a guide, we actually understand, oh, this is. So this was the story where we saw, they are blind and they are trying to feel and interpret their own. Some interpret as this is a spear, some interpret as a ball, some as a pillar, the tail as a snake. So each person is, interpreting their own thing. So we only when we, follow the spiritual master, that kind of blindness is taken out. With our limited senses, we cannot understand, right? So we have to follow the spiritual master, because with our limited knowledge, it will lead us to believe that, okay, this is the truth. I read something, and that is what happens with Gita, right? Why we have so many commentaries? Because people don't go with the flow, the way Krishna said. They just pick up one verse in between any chapter, and the interpretation is done, which is not the right way, right? We need to know the background, right? We need to know how it is flowing, right? Even in our daily conversations, if someone just hears one statement of your whole paragraph, it is not the right interpretation, right? So, okay, so now comes the 3rd shloka. This is also very important, because now that we know that this transcendental knowledge is, we have to take it from parampara, Krishna gives the qualification. What qualification should we have to get this knowledge? Yeah, and that is a devotee and a friend. Yeah? So, Shivani ji, will you be able to read this?
Yes, ma'am. Saevayam maya tetya yoga prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hetu dukkhamam. that very ancient science of relationship with the Supreme. Sorry, 1 minute. That very ancient science of relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Bhagavad-Gita 4.3. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you. So it is an ancient science, mysterious as well, right? And not everybody can understand it. If Krishna is saying this, then we have to understand it. It's not easy, right? And like I said, any material scholarship, you might have a PhD, you might have a great degree, that doesn't assure that you will understand, the spiritual science, right? That is not a qualification to understand this, right? Now, what qualification is it? It's Krishna is highlighting that not everyone can get it, but only someone who is a devotee and who has a relationship with Krishna. Here he's highlighting friend because Arjun was in that relationship with Krishna, right? But for us, the takeaway is along with a devotee, we need to have our own relationship with Krishna. Yeah. Now, we also learned this before that in spiritual world, we have 5 kind of relationships, right? It was similar, like, something like dasya, which is as a servant, as a friend, as a parental affection, and as madhurya, right? Which is gopis. So, or as a shant, which is neutral. So it's like we have these different, our original position of soul, right? We are conditioned because we are in this material nature. But originally, back in the spiritual world, we all have our own relationship, one among these with Krishna. Right? So Krishna is saying that yes, as a devotee, you can only understand this if you are a devotee of Krishna, right? And then I think further there's a purport also which Prabhupada has highlighted very nicely. So Trupti ji, will you be able to read it?
Yes, Mother. There are 2 classes of men, namely the devotee and the demon. The Lord selected Arjuna as the recipient of this great science owing to his being a devotee of the Lord. But for the demon, it is not possible to understand this great mysterious science. Arjuna accepts Sri Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and any commentary on the Gita following in the footsteps of Arjuna is a real devotional service to the cause of this great science. The demonic, however, do not accept Lord Krishna as he is. Instead, they concoct something about Krishna and mislead general readers from the path of Krishna's instructions. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. So, Prabhupada is highlighting here like 2 classes of men, demons, devotees, right? And what is the gist of this is that demonic people, their mindset, they will never accept Krishna. They will always be envious of Krishna, and devotees will always look, towards Krishna, right? So when we are talking, quite a lot of people say, devotees, that, oh, you guys, why do you compromise so much? Why are you getting away from these material things, from leisures, pleasures? We need to, as a devotee, make sure that we have the right mindset, that we are not running away from or detaching from the material things. We are running towards Krishna. We are trying to attach to Krishna, which is the key thing, right? We have seen Bhagavad-Gita till now, and further, especially in the middle 6 chapters, it's the cream. We'll see how Krishna highlights, only thing Krishna needs is a plain heart, that love for him. He has everything with him, right? So it's us who are in need, right? So we should our approach should be like Arjuna. Arjuna, what didn't he have? He was a great valor. He had a kingdom. He had great wives. He could defeat the demigods. He had all the great weapons, he won from, but still we see how no matter what qualifications materially he had, he was fully surrendered to Krishna. He had that unflinching faith, right? So we are nothing when compared to his valor, right? So why the thought, why the thought process that we are great and we are always correct, and that hesitancy to surrender to Krishna, right? So if great personalities like Arjuna, we'll see several, especially in Bhagavatam, we see so many examples. It's full of devotee stories, right? So when such great personalities can do, then what is limiting us, right? So clearly here, two qualifications. One is a devotee and the second is relationship with Krishna. Yeah. So just moving further, conscious of time. Yeah, this is really nice. Trying to understand Bhagavad-Gita with one's own mundane knowledge is like licking a bottle of honey from outside. Only when one becomes a devotee of Krishna, one can understand Bhagavad-Gita. That taste, that ruchi of Bhagavad-Gita, to understand Krishna. Only when we dip in the bottle, we can taste it. You cannot just look at it, you can just assume and you can think that, no, you need to have that taste, right? And you will never understand, you will never get the real taste at all. Hence, we need to become a devotee to get that real taste, to dive into it. Okay, now after all this is heard, when we highlighted so much about how ancient is Gita and all. Now Arjuna, as usual, he's actually just asking questions for us. He's covered by Yog Maya. He is a Rajarishi, right? So he's a great devotee of Krishna. If in the battlefield Krishna chose him out of all great personalities, then we can understand how exalted he is, right? And that's why he's asking on our behalf. That now the fourth shloka refers to Arjuna asking that, if you're saying, Krishna, that you gave it to sun god, but you are you are much younger, how did you manage? So he says that atheistic people, this is the link, consider Krishna as an ordinary man, right? And they may not believe that he instructed the sun god. So Arjuna wanted Krishna to authoritatively establish the truth about himself, and Krishna answers. So Arjuna says in this shloka, quote, that the sun god Vivaswan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed the sun? Krishna, you are young, you are all fine. So how sun god, so many millions years ago? So now Krishna answers. And this is the section which is really very cherishing, 5th to 10th shloka. So in the 5th shloka, Krishna highlights, his divine nature when Arjuna is raising that question. So Krishna, mentions about his appearance. He clearly states in 4.5 that my birth and death are not like yours. Many, many births, both you and I, have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. And in the 6th shloka, he continues saying, uniqueness of that explains the uniqueness of Krishna. So he continues saying, although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So Krishna here is highlighting we need to see two entities. One is like us, living entity, and the other is himself as Bhagavan, right? And he clearly highlights his extraordinary qualities here, right? Which clearly demarcates us to understand it is, it is different from the normal living entity. Yeah. Krishna's body is transcendental, means Sachitananda, right? Full of Sat, Chit, Anand. It's 3. So eternal, blissful, and Chit is full of knowledge. Yeah. So Krishna's body is full of that. Yeah. And it never deteriorates, he says. Right. But ours is not, right? We don't have that extraordinary qualities, right? So Krishna is omniscient, means he can remember past, present, and future. He is highlighting here. And for us, if we ask, what did we have for lunch yesterday or dinner, we'll take a moment, quite a lot of gap to really remember what was it actually. So it is very clearly defined the difference between a living entity and Krishna. Krishna's everything is transcendental. Yeah. And here, the other important thing is he says, I still appear, right? We'll see in further shlokas. Krishna never, there is a mention that he takes birth like us, birth and death. He appears and he disappears. Yeah. And he highlights here the same. He appears, yeah, because there is no, he doesn't undergo this cycle of birth and death at all, because his body is beyond this. And that's why we call it as transcendental. Okay. And this is highlighted very nicely in this nectarian verse from Brahma Samhita, which is Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantam Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tam Aham Bhajami. So Brahmaji is saying this, right? Brahma Samhita is from. So I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, which is Krishna, who is original person, absolute, infallible, without beginning. Yeah, without beginning. Yeah. Although expanded into unlimited forms, he's still the same original, the oldest, and the person always appearing as a fresh youth. Even though he's oldest, he's a fresh youth. Such eternal, blissful, all-knowing forms of Lord are usually not understood by even the best Vedic scholars. But they are always manifest to pure, unalloyed devotees. Yeah? So, Supreme Lord Krishna appears in various incarnations, like different avatars, but does not change his Sachitananda, the transcendental body. Any avatar he comes with the same. Yeah. Everything in relation to him is spirit. Yeah. Being omniscient, he remembers all the past, present, and future. Yeah. So further then, again, relating this with, because there is a huge class of people who think Krishna is a normal person. And he's just like us with some extra powers. That is what they think. He's a bit of extraordinary personality itself. He's a living entity. That's what. So people say that. And so we when we see correlating this with this example, we see here Narendra Modi walking into jail, right? So when a prime minister is going into a jail, visits a jail, does it mean that he's one among the prisoners? No, right? He comes with his own will and leaves with his own will whenever he wants, right? So similarly, Krishna appears whenever on his will. Yeah, but that doesn't mean he is just one of us, right? It doesn't mean that Narendra Modi is one of the prisoners. No, he is visiting there, right? He's going there on his own will. And the laws, just because he's in the prison, all the laws which are applicable for the prisoners doesn't mean it is applicable for Narendra Modi, right? Otherwise, if everything was the same, then why wouldn't we lift something like Govardhan? We expand into so many forms. No, So there were several instances when Krishna appeared, which shows his extraordinary power, extraordinary things, right? Expanding in, he was with 16,108 queens. Each of them had their own palaces, and Krishna was individually with each of them. Can we even think? It's unimaginable, right? It's inconceivable. That's why we say we can only understand it by love, not by just speculation or logic. Put any logic, no, right? Okay, so and then again one more which Prabhupada highlights as an example, that with sun. So factually, Krishna's appearance and disappearance are like the sun's rising, right? Moving before us and then disappearing from our eyesight. When the sun is out of sight, we think that the sun has set. And when the sun is before our eyes, we think that the sun is on the horizon. Actually, the sun is always in its fixed position, right? But owing to our defective, insufficient senses, we calculate the appearance and disappearance of the sun in the sky, right? So we are trying to see things from our own limited senses and vision. But that doesn't mean that we are interpreting everything right. It is beyond our capacity, right, to understand. Right? Okay, so moving further, the 7th shloka, we'll be covering 10 And okay, we are on time, looks like. So timing of Krishna, the most famous verse. I'll keep this open. Who want to recite this? I think all of us must have watched the P.R. Chopra's this thing, Mahabharata.
I'll recite, Mataji.
Sure, yeah.
यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिं भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानं धर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्. Whenever and whenever there is a decline in religious practice, O dissident of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself.
Right,
Bhagavad
most
Gita
famous.
4.7. Thank you.
Right. I think we all know this, right? So he comes in such instances. He appears again, right? When irreligion has risen. And we can correlate that when we see the examples. You know, when we saw that the irreligion, like Duryodhana, people like Duryodhana, there was high irreligion, right? High amount. And Krishna came down, you know, he descended. We could also see, you know, when it comes to Prahlad Maharaj, that the irreligion, you know, it went to the, you know, the brim, and then Krishna appeared as Narasimha, right? So you will see even Hiranyaksh in past. So we'll see different, you know, it makes completely, you know, sense when we see that, you know, whenever there is a rise in irreligion, we see Krishna descend. Yeah, and again he highlights Rajamyaham. Yeah, I descend, I manifest, I don't take birth, right? So he's highlighting that. And again, the most famous verse, I think Shivani ji had unmuted that time. So do you want to recite this one, the other famous verse?
Yes, Mataji. Paritranaya sadhunam. Purpose of Krishna's appearance, sorry. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. To deliver the pious unto and annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. Bhagavad-Gita 4.8.
Thank you. So these are the two things for sure we know, right? Most of our generations know these two shlokas, right? And we all know the meaning also. But just to highlight, you know, Krishna, when he says, you know, something, there is a rationale behind it, right? So the very first reason he's giving is to deliver the pious, right? To satisfy his devotees, that means, right? Pious are the devotees, yeah? To take the devotees back to Godhead, you know? To spend time with them on earth, yeah? To fulfill their wish of giving them opportunity to serve Krishna. So that's the first. Otherwise, we can see Krishna, if he can give a glance, with his glance, if he can create multiple universes, innumerable universes, does he really have to come down from Golok Vrindavan to kill these people like Duryodhana or Kamsa or Hiranyakashipu? No, you know, that is his secondary purpose. And that's what we need to understand from this, you know. Even though we must have heard it so many times, we must have not noticed this, because I didn't, you know, when I was going through this. So it was only when I started learning Gita, I realized, okay, so there is a rationale behind this. So, so the very first reason is for his devotees. He descends for his devotees. Otherwise, he could even send somebody from Goloka, or from, you know, he could empower somebody to just kill these miscreants, right? And the second reason he gives is Vinashaya Dushkrita. Then comes, you know, annihilating the ones who are troubling his devotees. Because these people are not troubling anybody else. They are troubling his devotees. So he's coming for their rescue, right? When we saw that Hiranyakashipu was troubling Prahlad Maharaj so much, we saw Krishna appeared as Narasimha, right? And then the last reason is to establish the religion. By doing this, he will establish the religion. And this, he does it every millennium, you know, every now. Yeah. And this is, again, from the purport. Biswaji, will you be able to read this?
Yes. there are various kind of avatars such as Purusha Avatara, then Guna Avataras, then Lila Avataras, Sakti Avesha, and Sakti Avesha Avataras, Manu Manavantra Avatar, Yoga Vataras, all appearing on schedule all over the universe. But Lord Krishna is the primeval Lord, the fountainhead of the all avatar. Lord Sri Krishna descends for the specific purpose of mitigating the anxieties of the pure devotees, who are very anxious to see him in his original Vrindavan pastimes. Therefore, the prime purpose of Krishna avatar is to satisfy his unalloyed devotees.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
So we briefly touched upon these different kind of 6 primary types of avatars also. And Prabhupada is highlighting that. And like, Purusha Avatara is Mahavishnu, from whom the Garbhodaksha Vishnu comes. From Garbhodaksha Vishnu's navel, the stem comes out, from whom Brahma Ji takes. And then we have Shirodaksha Vishnu, who is the super soul in all of us, in all living entity. So that is 3 Purusha Avatars. Guna Avataras are, so 3 gunas, right? Mode of passion, ignorance, and goodness, right? Which is goodness is by Vishnu, passion is by Brahmaji, and ignorance is by Shiva. So these are the 3 guna avatars, which is Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. And then Leela avatars, he comes in, we know the Leela avatars, right? Varaha. Shakta Vesha avatar is, it is empowered. He empowers individuals, Shakta Vesha, that is. For example, Narad Muni, Vyasdev, 4 Kumaras, these are all empowered, beings. Yuga Avatara, we know that, like, for example, for Kali Yuga, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came as a Yuga Avatar to establish the Yuga Dharma, that particular Yuga Dharma. Manvantar Avatar are like Yagna, Dharma, there are different Manvantars. So, Manvantar Avatar. So yeah, overall, what we are trying to say is that be it any kind of avatar Krishna appears in, it's primarily, he descends to take out the anxieties of his pure devotees, to lessen them and try, who are very anxious to see him also, right? So this is from the purport. So overall, we need to remember that primary reason for Krishna is to descend is to satisfy his pure devotees. Yeah, that is the primary reason. And secondary reason is, of course, which is famous, that he comes and he kills many demons. It said that, when he was in Vrindavan, he killed a demon every day, every day. So, and we see so many demon stories, in Bhagavatam also, in the 10th canto, several demons. So, and we see, like Kamsa, he was troubling his devotee Devaki, Hiranyakashipu, Prahlad, and punishment is also his mercy, right? Because they eventually get liberation when they are killed by Krishna, right? So, okay, 4.9, very, very important shloka, which is knowing Krishna's appearance and activity. Very important. So it goes like Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mam eti so Arjuna. So one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So Krishna, he's saying Janma Karma. If we understand this of Krishna, his appearance, which is transcendental, and his activities. If one remembers this, here he has highlighted a word called as Tattva. It's very important, right? Tattva means in reality. One who realizes this in reality. It's just not theoretical understanding, yeah, he's God, yeah, this, yeah. Not theoretical or being more technical that I know this part mentions this, that. No, it's not theoretical or technical. It's more, with great logic, with great understanding, which is unshakable with, unshakable faith, trying to know his sweetness. People know his opulence, that he had so much of luxury and he had so much, opulence with him. But along with opulence, knowing his sweetness, right, towards his devotees also. So understanding these, in reality, that is the tattva, right? So we need to deeply realize the components, which is that prema, that love, right? That once a person understands that, Krishna clearly states that he will not have to undergo this birth and death cycle. And he will go back to his Godhead, which is, he highlights here first, and my eternal abode. So material creation is not eternal, right? It is temporary. But his abode, he is highlighting, it's eternal, right? And we learned that different stages of bhakti, right? Which starts with Shraddha, Sadhusam, Bhajan Kriya. And then we see, that those are the stages. And the last stage there was prema, right? So that prema, if we get that component, right, which is the last stage of, then it will be. And we need to it's not a rocket science, to be honest. It's not so difficult. It's just if we if we have, all we need is a plain heart and acceptance. Not to be envious that, oh, he had so much, people are doing so much gaga about it. No, So there is a reason, right? That's why, so we need to just have a plain heart and an acceptance that, yes, that will start, that can be a great start for us to start really taking the knowledge, accepting that. Right? So if we are envious that, oh, this person is completely into it, that is in itself envious. So envious doesn't have to be just demons. We see, maybe in your family itself, that, oh, you are doing too much of this, what all the time this, so it is also, why are you not spending time with us? Why are you giving even that few hours in the day to Krishna? That is a kind of enviousness. Why are you giving that? So that non-envious nature is really key, and we'll see it. That is one of the quality Krishna highlights later in the chapters, that it is faith and non-enviousness. These are two primary things if we have. So from all the pastimes we have always, when we see these pastimes, only a fool cannot realize that Krishna is extraordinary, right? Him showing the universe to Yashoda Maya in his mouth. He killing demons and number of demons. This is Dhenukasura picture. He killed Pralamasura, Bakasura, name, so many asuras, right? Then he lifted Govardhan Hill, just not lifted in his little finger. I have my son, always wondering, I cannot even hold a book on my little finger, left hand. How can Krishna, he keeps thinking about this. So it's unimaginable, so it cannot be done by anyone, any living entity. It has to be an extraordinary power. And then in Brahma Vimohan Leela, we see how he expands into different Vishnus to teach Brahmaji a lesson, because Brahmaji becomes a bit, so it is very clear if we try to open our eyes, basically. And this is the last shloka for today. And it is highlighting some key aspects which we have most in Kali Yuga. So knowers of Krishna love Krishna, right? And maybe can I have Kavyaji? Will you be able to read? I think last time you did not have a Sanskrit one. So
yes, Mother. Veet rag bhay krodha manyam man maya mamu pashrita bahavo gyan tapsa puta madbhavam agata. Being freed from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking revenge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental knowledge for me. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. So he is giving three things, right? One who is freed from attachment, fear, and anger. Now, Krishna is explaining here what helps us, holds us back, to understand Krishna's position and his opulence. What holds us back to accept it? One is attachment. Attachment to what? To everything, to whole of this material thing, right? My family, my, this, my, that. Everything has a my in front, right? So that attachment, it's very difficult, right? And fear of, that we are so attached to this body that nothing should happen. Death, right? This body, I have so many times people, I come across people who spend, who I think for every small thing there's a topic, right? I'm getting gray hair. That can be a topic for the day. You can spend maybe hours talking about it. So we are so attached to this body, we can't bear it undergoing anything, right? So that kind of attachment and fear that we will lose this, we don't want to think. We don't want to think that if we lose this, we will, if we practice bhakti, we will get spiritual body. Then I don't have to undergo that thought process of losing anything only. I'll be having my permanent body. But we will only think about current, right? So, and fear of that, right? And then anger of what? There are times that people say that, oh, there are so many religious lines nowadays. I don't know. I'm confused. Which one is right? Which is not? I'm tired of analyzing. It's like people are cheating and just taking that as the brim and rather than trying to find the authorized. It's like walking away from religion itself. Because they think that it's religion only which is the cause of all this. So it's like anger on that. We are not able to fully. That's what Krishna says here, right? That many people in the past, by fully being absorbed in me and taking shelter in me, taking refuge in me, just take Krishna's shelter. We also sometimes realize that no matter how much tension or worry we take, at the end, nothing is in our hands. Whatever has to happen, eventually it will. So rather, at that moment, we feel that, oh no, let me. But from our past experience, we should learn. It's not that we will straight away get to a point that we understand everything. No, it has to be gradual, right? It is important for us to realize that, I have faced this in past and it didn't work out with me getting this. And that will help us to rather focus on taking shelter for Krishna. Yeah. But we enjoy in that also. It's like that camel example, right? The camel eats thorn. And when it eats thorn, its mouth bleeds. And he enjoys the taste of that blood. Then what is the mindset that this thorn is only very tasty. So we are undergoing the same thing. We are chewing the chewed is what Prabhupada says. We are chewing the chewed. We have done this. And we are enjoying that little happiness what we get. We are enjoying in that. We don't want to come out of it, right? And then the last slide of the day. So I'll give it to the next one is Rama Prabhaji. Will you be able to read it?
Some people are too materially attached and therefore do not give attention to spiritual life. Some of them want to merge into the supreme spiritual cause, and some of them disbelieve in everything. Being angry at all sorts of spiritual speculation out of hopelessness, one has to get rid of all three stages of material consciousness: attachment to material life, fear of a spiritual personal identity, and the conception of void that arises from frustration in life. To get free from these three stages of the material concept of life, one has to take complete shelter of the Lord, guided by the bona fide spiritual master, and follow the disciplines and regulative principles of devotional life. Bhagavad-Gita 4.10 perfect. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. So I would request you all again to go through the purport, of these highlighted shlokas. They are beautifully written by Prabhupada, and I think I did mention on what are these three factors: attachment to what, anger to what, and fear to what, and that's what is here, So it's just about taking shelter, right? So with that said, we'll conclude today's session.